So now we're resuming the chapter from the missing link on love and forgiveness. And we ended with a very powerful statement of there is a vast difference between forgiving a person and forgiving an act. And I think that's true. People have talked as for themselves and for others. And he goes on, for example, say you were at the zoo and you approached a tiger's cage. If you were silly enough to put your hand through the bars and the tiger, being a tiger, ripped your hand open, you would have probably cursed the tiger. Later on, though, as you thought about it, you realize it really wasn't the tiger's fault. You would forgive the tiger. Yet you would undoubtedly have learned not to stick your hand into the cage again. And I'll read both sides and then we can see. Forgiveness releases you from mental anguish and pain and all the horrible negative feelings an unforgiving mind experiences. Wow. When you learn to forgive, you see with clarity the ignorance and the innocence of those who trespass against you. You realize that hanging on to old grudges is like a miser in deep water, clutching at a bag of fool's gold, unaware that the fool's gold is just heavy, useless rocks weighing him down. Anybody have comments?
No. I mean, it's just, this is so powerful, both those first two paragraphs there. When forgiveness releases you from the mental anguish and pain and all the horrible negative feelings an unforgiving mind experiences. That's just, wow. Why we unknowingly hang on to the past and beating ourselves up and don't realize that we're just so close, we're just thought away from releasing it, but nobody pointed us to that direction until you read something like this and the power of it.
I think that what you just said is very powerful, Brad. Nobody's pointed us in this direction. And one of the things that's been powerful for me, and I really want to hear again from the soldiers and of course from Judy, but is to tell people say, I see now that what I'm doing to myself. I don't know how to forgive. I don't know how to forgive myself or that person that did X, Y, and Z. And my response has been, and it's true for me, if you truly see that forgiveness is, and you're willing to look in that direction, even if you don't see how to get there right now, whether it's of self or others, because of universal mind is trying to bring you home every moment. To me, if you don't like using universal mind, use God, use whatever. There is something within us that is trying its best to bring us home every moment. And if you see clear that that's where you want to get, you're going to wake up some morning with forgiveness in your heart.
Yeah, it's acknowledging the fact that it's an option. You might not see how it's going to happen, but knowing that it's a possibility means there's more chance of it happening than thinking that it's not a possibility.
Well, and you quit trying to use your intellect to get there, David.
Yeah.
You quit trying to figure out how to forgive yourself or someone else, and you're open to the possibility that there is a, again, to me, it's universal mind, it's divine mind, whatever you want to see it, that there's something in the human being that's always moving person towards healing, and forgiveness is a powerful part of healing, physical and mental. So I don't know if that resonates with people or if it doesn't seem true, or I welcome comments on that.
I actually find that I was identified with what Dave said, that This is something I struggle with, I can tell you, in my life, is that even if I think I forgave something, sometimes I find myself closed. Like I forgave in my intellectual mind, but my body did not forgive. And this is something I've been struggling with, which I haven't found, actually, I haven't found a way yet. I mean, it's like my body remembers and doesn't let go sometimes. Does anyone understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
I think the body is manifesting what we haven't let go of.
Yeah.
It's letting us know what we haven't let go of. It's like it's not the body acting on its own.
No, yeah, but for me, the struggle is to find a way to let go. I mean, it's not, I mean, this chapter especially is something I've been like working towards a lot in my life. I mean, the ability to, you know, when you feel comfortable with someone, so you feel like alive with him and your heart opens and everything. And for me, I found that if I get hurt by people or by circumstances, I can go back to being with those people and circumstances, but it won't be the same. And this is something I've been struggling with, which I haven't found a way to let go yet.
I think in intention, I think what I associated with what Dave said very strongly is the intention is what gets you there eventually, is just to be looking to find that and not worry too much about if you're finding it or how to find it. But, you know, I found, it's funny, I had a funny experience in having moved away from where I live now for 20 years and then moved back here. I encountered sort of my past. I was like all these people that I'd known for years before I moved away. And it was very surprising to me how many people that I didn't care for, so to speak, when I lived here before in my past. And then I looked and I thought, gee, they're really kind of fun people, or they're really nice, or this person's very, and people were very kind to me, very welcoming, very inclusive. You know, people started calling and asking me to join things and do things. And I was shocked at how different the same people looked to me after 20 years of not thinking about them at all, and then suddenly re-encountering them and having memories that just completely did not jive with the moment, with who I was seeing in the moment. And it was vivid for me because I think not that many people have that kind of experience where you end up, you know, kind of suddenly confronting everybody that you used to know. And, but, you know, I was really, it was humbling. It was very humbling for me because if you had asked me, I would have said, oh yeah, the ones that, you know, weren't kind to me or gave me a hard time in business or whatever, of course I forgave them. But I really realized that I hadn't until I saw them again and saw them with fresh eyes.
I think what we're talking about is the game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to talk about without people hearing it as judgment, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. To me, to the degree that we truly understand how these principles, how this system works, there is no circumstance or person external to me that can hurt me other than physically. I'll say that again. And I'm not asking people to believe that, but I'm asking people to imagine if that were true, how empowering that would be. That if indeed there is literally no circumstance or person external to me that can cause me emotional pain. How empowering that would be. Now, that doesn't mean that I will never cause myself and create pain. If somebody came in my door right now and said, one of my children has been killed in a motor vehicle accident, I'm going to go through a period of pain. But I know the origin of that I've been living with the expectation that none of my children should die before me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that I'll be carried through whatever experience I'm given, because there is a spiritual force that's attempting to bring me through life gracefully as possible. I'm struck. Linda was reading to me, and it wasn't planned, but I think it's on page 31 of this book called Island of Knowledge by Linda Quiring, that she was one of the first people that Sid had seen and had many psychiatric hospitalizations and electroshock therapy. And she was one of those people that just heard what he was saying very profoundly. And I think, Judy, you probably remember me telling you the story that in 1992, I think I was sent as part of the Three Principles board to go spend a week with Sid.
Yeah.
And I went down one day, and her husband was selling soap on the weekend at a scat thing, and he didn't know Sid was back in town, anyway. But he talks about in this book, he talks about that the true purpose of life for a person is to accumulate personal power. Now, I'd never heard that before.
No.
And you think of personal power as power that people use over other people.
Mm.
Right? They gain power and then they impose it. But when he speaks, he talks about the personal power is what takes you from the outside influence to inside influence. That with understanding, you gain personal power so that nothing external to you has the power to harm you, except physically. He says, if you ever get brave enough and challenge death, you will know the self outside and the self inside. You will have become one with both outside and inside. When this happens, everything looks beautiful. I still don't understand the person's personal power cannot really be explained. Sid said it must be experienced. I don't know. I found that very powerful. And then it says this one page here, and I'll just stop there. One could say personal power is the amount of personal knowledge one has of oneself. The more you begin to truly know yourself, the more control you have over life. Therefore, the outside influences have less control over you. Very powerful to me. And again, Elsie says, Sid used to talk about being able to take responsibility for our experience without burden of blaming ourselves or anyone else. And again, it's not a should. It's not a should. It's just the more you understand the system, the more that becomes a reality. And anyway, so I'll stop my jabbering.
Well, to me, though, also what you're talking about really is the power that you feel as the thinker, as the person who's creating your own experience of life, to realize that whatever's happening, it's not what's happening, it's the experience of what's happening that I'm creating. And I think that's what has made all the difference for me. That I remember the very first talk that I ever gave at a Three Principles conference was called Power To, Not Power Over. And I had put it together in the context of business at that time because I was still in business. But the difference that I experienced even working with clients when I realized that it wasn't important for me to be smarter or have the answer or to have power over their outcomes. It was important for me to have the power to connect with them and to feel comfortable in their presence and not get defensive and to listen. And all of those powers were what I was learning about, you know, quieting down myself and seeing that that is the greatest power that we have, is the power to think and take it more or less seriously.
So, Ofer, does this sound irrelevant or irreverent, or does this sound in any way helpful?
No, it is helpful. First of all, it's a reminder, and second, I actually do connect to this power you're talking about. I have different name for it, but I think one of the, it's like I think you use the word accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is something which I often struggle because I won't say struggle, you know, because guys are always asking me, I don't get it. Is it like instant? Like, you mean I can get an insight any moment, but on the other hand, you're talking about accumulation and working towards something, and they kind of like contradict. You know what I mean? But for me, I understand the contradiction. I understand it, and for me, they don't really contradict. But I do. Yeah, I guess it was helpful. Yeah.
I don't know. Did I use the word accumulate?
No, I think it was said. I think it was in what you read.
I think you think accumulate. I know you didn't use accumulate. You said something about personal power. Accumulate personal power. That's what you said.
The amount of personal power one has of oneself.
Yeah. So
to me, it doesn't. I don't see any word accumulate.
So maybe it was mine.
Maybe amount is what's made it sound that.
Yeah.
But and I think what's true is, to me, I think of how Sid talks about that there's an infinite number of doors of understanding of the nature of these principles, so that with each insight, he says the world changes because your eyeballs change. That what you see looks different, and that's incremental. I think that we have incremental insights. That infinite is a lot of doors. You know, we're never going to get through all of them. He says it's endless, and so every time I have an insight that makes me a little less at the effect of external circumstances and people, I feel gratitude, because it helps me be present more of the time in my life while it's happening with a light heart. So I sense that the people that are going to be listening to this, that's what they're looking for, is to maybe have those moments at the beginning will only be. I remember talking on the chemical dependence ward, Judy, and saying to people, you know, if right now you have only 2 minutes of your day that you feel like you're thinking clearly, I would suggest that during those 2 minutes is the only good time to make any important decisions.
Yeah.
And if you keep listening and you look in this direction, that 2 minutes is going to become 5 minutes. That 5 minutes is going to become 12 minutes. That 12 minutes is going to become 19 minutes. That 19 minutes is going to become 38 minutes. 38 minutes is going to become 55 minutes. 55 minutes is going to become an hour and 20. And I remember, and I think I've told you that before, that lady I saw her the third time that said she was doing wonderful, and it ended up she was feeling good 10% of the time and full of depression and anxiety 90% of the time. And yet she told me she had moved from 0.1% to 10% in 2 sessions. And the last she looked at her math book, that was 100-fold increase.
Yeah.
And if she had gotten that on the stock market, she'd be a billionaire in no time.
Yeah.
So to her, that 10% of the time that she was feeling joyful and alive and peaceful and present, she felt so much gratitude for that. And you know that was going to continue. So to me, I think that's the important part. If we can awaken hope in people, yes, it's incremental, and it's gratitude for every thing you see that continues your journey forward. It's when we start judging ourselves that we should be learning faster, or we should be feeling better more of the time, like you said, Ofer, and I shouldn't ever have an angry moment, you know, and I should never have to apologize for what I just did. But grateful for the times that we didn't have to, that we caught ourselves. That's
enough. Yeah.
That's being incremental. So in a way, that I guess that does it augments the moments that we live in peace. The more understanding we have. So I don't know. I feel like I'm talking too much.
It made sense. It made sense.
So we have another. Whose turn is it to read?
Well, I think it's mine.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. There's no way to guarantee a trouble-free life. Life is like any other contact sport. You may encounter hardships of one sort or another. Wise people find happiness not in the absence of such hardships, but their ability to understand them when they occur. I think when I read this the first time through here, and that sentence, life is like any other contact sport. You may encounter hardship of one sort or another. Those two sentences, they changed me in the understanding that Sid saw that and realized that it was a contact sport, and that there would be hardships and things would show up, and part of being human was experiencing them. And just having that awareness of the truth of that and looking in this new direction. I don't know how many times I've said to a warrior or first responder that, and they say things shouldn't be the way they are, and I had to say, I agree. And life is a contact sport. And I quote it right from here.
Yeah.
Words. And somehow most of the time when I do say it, even though they may be in grief or sadness or even anger, they hear that. I think part of it most of the time, the truth of it. So that's a powerful one right there for me.
And I think it's interesting that that Sid points out is that we have the ability to understand them. You know, in other words, you're not going to prevent the world from being the world, but when you understand your place in it and understand what it is, you know, what we're living through, we don't get so frightened by it. You know, we don't get frightened because we see that it's just part of the natural experience of living. And I think a lot of people have difficulty. I think it's interesting to watch, you know, when things happen in the world that create hardship, to watch how different people's responses are to the same circumstances, and how easily some people move through them and help others through them and get to the end of whatever that is, and how for some people it's just more than they can bear. And you realize it has nothing to do with the circumstances. It really is the ability to understand them and to see what you can do.
This time in all of our lives at the moment is an ideal global view of that as we're going through this coronavirus. You know, we're seeing people coping with the prospect of it very well, and other people not at all. And it's the fact that you've got that spectrum of response. It just points back to the fact that we are all living our own different experiences based on how we think and understand things. And in that lies hope for those that are finding life difficult at the moment. And so, we're seeing it on a global scale at the moment. It's nuts. But there is so much possibility spectrum of people's individual suffering based on their understanding of what's going on and how it affects them or may affect them or not, as the case may be. It sort of really does help sum it up and show the fact that life is fragile. It is a contact sport, and we are all at the whim of that to some degree or another. But the only thing that we have any control over is our response based on our thoughts, and how seriously we take those thoughts or not, how built on truth they are. And it's that business of seeing possibility, seeing hope, and striving to learn a little bit more and get a little bit more comfortable with our surroundings to help us understand how to move on.
It's interesting. I saw I'm getting an echo. I saw an interview on television this morning, and it was two couples who are both laid off their jobs, and the interviewer was trying to figure out how their life was going with what they were dealing with. And the first one was like, oh, this is terrible, this is awful, we don't know what to do with the kids, and blah, blah, blah. They went through this whole litany of all the things that were, difficult for them. And then the second couple come on, and the guy has been laid off from the oil industry. He's not planning to return to it because he thinks that oil production is dead. And he's got to find a new career, but he's always wanted to be a songwriter. So he's been writing songs, and he feels really good about them because his friends really like them. And he thinks he's got a possibility of, actually reaching that dream that he's had since he was a kid. And his wife is pregnant with their third child. And she said, yes. And he sings to the baby in my tummy. And I think the baby likes it too. And they said, well, aren't you worried? You have two children, you're having a third. And she said, no, he's got such a great attitude. I know we're going to make it. So the first couple come back on the air, and they said, forget what we said. It's, complaining is not a good idea. And they were very, very inspired by listening to the second couple. And it was so interesting because I thought, isn't that really what all of us can help, how we can all help each other, is to not judge anybody for whatever they're going through or whatever they're experiencing, but to be able to say it's not always that way, and some people see it differently. And just to be able to see that it's possible to see it differently, really did something for those other people. I thought it was great.
Turns the light on and shows them that there's hope.
Yeah.
That's a really, really important message.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're talking about at the end of the day.
Right.
Is hope and seeing the potential in a future that's there for the taking. It's there in front of us. It's there to experience, and the way that starts is by being there for yourself, forgiving yourself, loving yourself, and enjoying the moment you're in right now. Because as we've been saying, living in the past doesn't serve you. Worrying about the future doesn't serve you, because that doesn't exist yet. The only thing you've got is now. And try and enjoy that for what it is, for where you are right now.
It's so vital, isn't it, from what you said, David, that the first step is to find some way to accept where we are. Because as long as we're in resistance to what is, we're not going to move from it, right? Whether Sid said it or I made it up, but when you get into resistance to what is, it's like putting a nail through your shoe. And the more you try to move forward, you find yourself going in circles. Again, I don't know whether he said that or I made that up from what he said, but it's certainly my experience that the first step to move forward or through beyond some experience is, even if at the beginning it's a reluctance acceptance. George used to talk about these stages, and I think that there's some truth to that, the grain of truth, that if I just say, okay, I really don't like this, but damn it, it is the way it is.
Yeah.
And then if you just, don't feed that, then you move to something like, well, it is the way it is, without the, damn it, it is the way it is. It's just an acceptance that, and then it seems like we find some gratitude for what we still have rather than focusing on what we don't have. And that's what's going to be the focus of the next chapter on wisdom when we come back next time, because Sid always talks about that wisdom. People say, how do you find that wisdom? And he says very clearly, find gratitude for what you still or what you have right now. Mm-hmm. That's going to lead you to the wisdom you're looking for. So I kind of leaking next chapter. So let's stop for today, unless anybody Ofer, do you have any closing comments, or kind of go around and see if anybody has any closing comments? Anybody?
I think I've said everything.
Okay.
We're done.
Yeah, me too. I think so.
David? Judy?
I'm done, thank you.
Done? Good. Thank you so much.